I'd like to invite our first speaker up, Neil, please, if you'd like to come up. And then Neil has started a project called One Leadership Project, and he's a coach. I've got to share this with you. He became a coach. I'm probably stealing his thunder, so to speak. He became a coach in 2004, and then became president of the ICF, the International Coaching Federation. In the UK chapter, 3 years later. So he's got something about him. And I've only met Neil, I think we met about 12 o'clock, didn't we? And what a genuine bloke. Really, really nice. Very articulate, unlike that's probably why it stood out. But really gentle with it. Really nice. And do you know what, before this day started, I had a look at Neil's website. I think I did mention it. I didn't tell him I'm going to read this bit out. But this I thought, oh, this is nice. I saw on his website. And then when I met him in person, he actually backed it up, which, without knowing that I've kind of read this. So I'm going to share it with you because it's almost like a poem. I love this work, whether it's coaching, training, or facilitation. Every conversation is different, fresh, inspirational, deeply human, real, sometimes very challenging. Normally there's laughter, occasionally tears, and more often than not, big shifts for the client, and that moves me. Isn't that nice? I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Just by way of replying, it was absolutely beautiful, this Neil. Again, a very genuine man with a fabulous story. I hope in due time Neil that comes out into the world. It's got a lot to give.
Speak on.
You're booming for. There we go.
Yeah, switched on now.
Thank you. It saved me the embarrassment that I was just saying. There's nothing to him as well. So thank you. And I'm very conscious being up here. I feel that I've been the sage on the stage, and that's, and I'm higher than you, and this is unusual, and so I'm just going to get used to that. Okay, thank you. I was quite moved by that first conversation. I was just having a conversation with Shirley about what is leadership, and it reminded me of my favourite quote about leadership. That great leadership is not about being great. It's about enabling the greatness in others. I just find there's real beauty in that sentiment. That it's so easy to become heroic and put leaders on the pedestal, where actually anyone's ability to reveal the greatness in others, I think, shows some sense of leadership. And that doesn't require a position, it doesn't require an office or a car or a title. I think it can come from anyone at any time. And be an influence. So, John kind of invited me on the idea of how can spiritually aware coaches create deeper, higher, inspirational leadership? How can spiritually aware coaches create deeper, higher, inspirational leadership? I'm not so sure that coaches create leaders. I'm often uncomfortable with the sense that coaching is a doing unto others thing. I don't think it is. There's something to me about being the midwife of what wants to happen, to facilitate it, to help bring it into the world. And there's something for me about being with those people on the journey, that life is big and can sometimes be scary and overwhelming. And there are places we often want to go, but we're not always comfortable to go alone. And we can be surrounded by friends and family with all the beauty and the strength that holds. And yet in a way, there's always an agenda that's there. There's always something going on. They have a position, and it's sometimes very hard to be truly open, to have those real conversations, to be truly vulnerable, or indeed to show our greatest strengths without fear of changing that dynamic with what may be a family member or a friend or something. So I think, to me, that a lot of the magic is just being with people to help bring into the world what wants to come into the world, to help be with them as they blossom and as they grow, and also as they go through the really difficult things in life as well. There's often a focus on positivity, but sometimes I think we can be pathologically positive, that sometimes life has tears. And it's important to be truthful in those moments of tears as well. Because there's beauty there as well. There's a wonderful coach, Julio Alala, which I think is the most fabulous name going. Julio Alala. Wonderful guy. And he has a phrase, we coach from our scars. We coach from our scars. That our very weaknesses and the things where we may label ourselves as being not enough and have to do our own work in that space, maybe the very space where we are at our best as coaches. I don't think we're strong as coaches when we think, okay, here's another one of my epithets. When you work with a good coach, you come away thinking, wow, they're really good. When you work with a great coach, you come away thinking, wow, I'm really great. Because the coach has kind of vanished. In a way, they may not even realise what it is you've done or how you've been there. But it's the being there. And the witnessing and the holding in love, in awe, in deepest respect of this person, this wonderful person. And also, with permission, being able to tell the deepest truth. It's really interesting how many people actually feel that in coming to this conversation, first they want confidence and security and safety, and that's really important to give. And when they feel safe, there's a sense of, okay, can you challenge me now? Am I really telling my truth? Am I really being all I can be? I sometimes get hit with these sense of words from somewhere, I don't know where. And so one is don't teach, don't preach, but share. So I hope I'm not preaching at any stage. One is go out into the world. And one is, as long as I'm not pretending to be any more or any less than who I really am, it'll be okay. And that's certainly been serving me well in the last sort of 4 or 5 months, and that's been with me. Because I know I've lived on both sides of that line at various times in my life. And often curiously, I'm pretending to be less than I really am. I don't think I can do this, or I'm not good enough, or I couldn't possibly write about it. And I think there's something about, we step into our greatness as coaches in many ways, when we can be truly real with the person as well. We're not pretending to be any greater or any less than who we really are, because that gives them the permission to be the same. So we find out who we really are in that moment. Anyway, none of that was on the script. John asked me to also share some of my story. So with your permission, I'll share some of that. It may be useful. And also to share some things that I'm learning and from where we are. So just to put it in context, I'm not related to Brahma Kumaris in any way whatsoever. I'm here, I suppose, in some ways as the majority of the work I do at the moment is with a thing called the One Leadership Project. It's not a spiritual organisation, but I would say it's probably spirit-full. It certainly has a lot of heart within it. In its essence, it's helping people to think beyond the now, beyond the constraints, beyond the self, and beyond just profit, beyond just this generation, helping people to think into that space. And to act as one, that if you're up to something big in the world, you've probably got to want to be doing this with others, so how can you do that as one team, perhaps as a whole organisation? And as your awareness grows, realising you're part of this whole interconnected world, so at one with everyone that's maybe supplying you or that you're serving, and as part of the community. And an essence of oneness is being at one with oneself, being authentic. So that's what's called the One Leadership Project. And the website's titled Enabling Catalysts, because we didn't know how to get that in, but the essence being that there are people in the world, and you may well be yourselves, who have that strange ability to make things happen, not by force, but by being who you are. To convene, to enable people to reveal their greatness. And some of those are leading organisations, some of those are building and initiating organisations. And many are just quiet within communities and within organisations, and have a moment, they will have a catalytic moment where there is something that is real and relevant for them, and they feel that they just have to stand up for or to speak about. But to stand up for something can often be a scary, lonely place as well as being deeply fulfilling. So it's being there for those people and supporting those people. So that's what the organisation is about. That's what we do. So we work with commercial organisations and charities in the education sector and health sector and all of do you actually want some of my story?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. I've got a big thing as a coach about informed consent. So, okay. Full story. I'm actually an engineer by first profession. Engineers are not known for their understanding of humanity. But there's a lot of really good guys and girls in there. And I just love that sense. I got into it because I love that sense of creativity, of this Greek idea of everything gets created twice. It gets created in the mind and then gets created in reality. And I love that sense of dream it and make it. I love how we can dig a hole in the ground and take the dirt and turn it into something amazing. I love that side of it. But interestingly, my final thesis was women in engineering, because I was also interested about the human element of it. And I was curious as why out of 70 people there were only 5 were female. And it was a wonderful experience to learn within that how we make decisions and what influences is in our life choices along the way. And it's particularly inspirational to hear these women who were making decisions which at the time, this is in the 80s, were quite unusual in many ways. And they were making a definite decision to become an engineer, where a lot of the guys fell into it because that's what happened to guys in their community type stuff. So there was that theme of people. Did the normal graduate track on engineering, great job. Became a manufacturing manager, sharing responsibility for 70 people. Fabulous work, really enjoyed that. And was, as part of that, I was part of a site I was on was a very old site, it was faced with closure. And as a management, we'd be just reabsorbed by this global organisation. But there were 70 really good guys and girls who would just become shelf fillers if we weren't careful. So we decided to transform the site. We wanted to declare UDI within a global organisation, which was curious. And we couldn't do what the organisation was expecting us to do. We couldn't make lots of stuff cheaply. But because these people were artisans, we filled cylinders, gases. These people could fill anything as long as it's safe and legal to do so. So we actually had a vision that we become an innovation centre. If you want 5 bottles of this gas that nobody's ever made anywhere else, we could do that. So we transformed the site, we collapsed lead times, but we did it, what was really interesting, we did it not by people like myself as engineers and manufacturing managers being clever. We got the people in a room and we met as equals, and that was the vital bit, we met as equals. So we'd have a table, and we'd have a sales director, and we'd have a cylinder filler, and a forklift driver, and a shop steward, and all these things. And it was the first experience I had of not being the expert, but enabling the greatness of others. And that was a revelation for me, because up to that point, I'd been marked well on school on how clever I was, and get up my management tree and how many answers and solutions you've got. And the revelation to me was finding out just how wonderful others are. Thank you. So I speak very quickly, and I said, can someone tell me if I need to slow down? Slow down. Thank you. Okay, so that then took me into consultancy, which was great. Working with wonderful people, revealing their greatness, not being clever. I was a clever consultant, but helping people to get their best thinking in them. And then I was advised to become a director of the organisation, which was actually the golden bullet. It was very attractive for the stage of life I was at, because it had the car and the title and the salary and the healthcare. But it wasn't what my soul was actually calling for. It felt the right thing to do, and I got record results, but I remember waking up 2 years in and telling my wife, I feel like I'm hollowing out. I could do the job and I could do it well, but I felt like I was hollowing out. I didn't have the courage to step out. And in 2002, it physicalised for me. This is the way I tell the story. That makes sense to me. As Steve Jobs says, you can only join the dots looking backwards. What was that great philosopher John Bon Jovi says, in my rearview mirror, my life is getting clearer. So, I found myself on a day trip to France, and I actually collapsed. I had to recover enough to drive the family back to my parents' house in Kent, and I could do no more. If you've ever been into this sort of stage, I just gave up. I'm now in the hands of others. I could do nothing. My father took me to the GP, that thankfully was open. The GP wrote a note, said, you haven't got time for an ambulance. Just get to the surgical team at Canterbury quickly. Just go. My father had the presence of mind. He his house. He said, "Do you want to see the family?" So we did the last goodbyes. My wife had a sense of what was going on, the children didn't. I suppose it's particularly poignant today being Father's Day. And that was really interesting. Don't know what I'm sharing it, so it was tough enough. I've got 3 children, it was tough enough for the older 2, but my youngest at the time was only 2. And there's a real sense of, she's only going to have photos. And that really hurt. To be able to experience her and her to experience me. And to remember those experiences of physically being with each other. Got to the hospital, they weren't quite sure what it was, they didn't know how to intervene. And as I remember it, they couldn't put any painkillers in me because they didn't want to mess it up for the anaesthetist. And as I remember it, but I'm aware that the brain creates all sorts of chemicals when it's under stress in this way. But I had a fairly classic out-of-body experience. I remember seeing myself convulsing on the trolley with my father beside me, thinking this is the wrong way round. Shouldn't be me first. And a fairly classic sort of sense of white and light and warmth and love and sound and feeling and everything. And I came away with a sense of the dying was absolutely horrible, but death kind of felt okay, yes. It's just the experience. Anyway, I found myself back in the body convulsing again. And night in intensive care. And anyway, got through it. But it was curious that it immediately felt like it was a really important moment. It was a wake-up call that this is an amazing life. You have an amazing life. As Tim always sort of says, you could have got Nat or Newt or you got human. You're human. Not only are you human, but we're human at the end of the 20th, beginning of the 21st century. Thousands have worked hard, suffered, fought to create freedoms we enjoy. We're not there yet, but we've come a long way. You have choices. We have the challenge of choice and the responsibility of choice. The choices themselves can be sometimes quite distressing. Do I do this or do I do that? But we have choice. I am incredibly grateful that I'm one of the first generations of males in this country that have not had to pick up anything pointy or that goes bang and had to point it at someone when I made a grudge against them. So we have this amazing thing called life. And this was my wake-up call to do something with it. But I didn't know what. I didn't know how long I was going to live, because they couldn't work it out. I had a surgeon who said, "I want to move 18 inches of your gut, but we don't know if it's the right 18 inches. Leave it there, thank you very much." They cleared up most of the things we may have been. And then something happened about a year later, which apparently is quite usual. I got into the car on a Monday morning and I couldn't drive to work because I couldn't remember where work was. Some people talk about mental breakdown. I experienced this sort of meltdown. It just went mush. I couldn't remember which way to drive the car or what to do at the end of the road. And that was a very interesting experience as well. And the way I kind of look at it now, it's the first stage of a year, which was really, I built up my life with these Lego blocks. But what I built was no longer appropriate, and it wasn't my design. And it was time to take all the pieces apart and start putting it back together again. So, I went through a period of great lostness, mild depression, and thankful for a wife that stood by me through all these sorts of things. And in the midst of this, I sensed I had to become a coach. The right thing to do is become a coach. Which is curious because I hadn't been coached. I hadn't read a book on coaching. Didn't know anything about it. But it just felt. And having been on that trolley before, it was like, just don't fight it. And thankfully having a wife that had seen me in sort of stage, she was just very supportive. So we took baby steps whilst I was still a director in this organisation. I went to do the coaching course and it felt like coming out. And so it was clear that me and the organisation were doing this. And in 2004, I set up my own coaching business. Total leap of faith. I had nothing in place. I had no clients, nothing. I hadn't even completed my coach training. Completely leap into the void. But I had a good mentor from the coaching program, and he invited me to join a coaching body. So I had a look around. The ICF felt like home, International Coach Federation. So I phoned up the president and said, just started, got this kit bag of experience, clearly haven't got any clients, or I haven't got a full order book, what needs doing? And in rapid succession, I did all sorts of odd jobs for the UK ICF, and then was invited to step forward as director membership and director research, and I became president in 2007. And the organisation was in a fairly tough place financially, and also slightly spiritually, we were exhausted. Anyway, there's a great vision for the ICF, and coaching is an integral part of society, and ICF coaches represent the high standards of professional excellence. So we gathered around these things, and we turned it around, we turned the finances around, we became the biggest chapter in the world. We were invited to speak and share globally because of what we were doing in the UK. And in 2008 I was presented with the President's Award for contributions to the global profession. So I then had this weird experience of, am I boring you by this way? Thank you. So, so I found myself in Montreal with 1,500 of the world's top coaches, with Peter Senge coming on just after me, picking up this award. But a funny thing happened. The session before I was with a session with Pachamama Alliance. Do any of you know Pachamama Alliance? Awaken the dream, change the dream. That's why I got this thing actually. And something in that session just caused me to go outside, and I just found myself pacing up and down this conference centre in Montreal, and I just said, share the dream. I don't want to share the dream. Share the dream. I don't want to share the dream. So the following day I ended up stepping onto a stage, a bit bigger than this, with big video screens either side, 1,500 of the world's top coaches. Saying, and it's an interesting experience because as I went to the lectern, I was very scared, and I went to the lectern. At the point that I hit the lectern, I thought, that's not very much. If it went up the sides and everything else, that'd be older people, but this is okay. Partly because the dream to share was that I just told people that I could make a big Oscar-winning speech and thank everybody, but there's far too many people to thank, so I just shared the dream. And the dream is, I have a vision of sitting with a grandchild on my lap, looking at me with the big eyes that children got, saying, Grandpa, when you knew the animals were dying, when you knew the oil was running out, when you knew those old ways weren't working, when you knew there was this suffering, what did you do? What did you do? I wanted to tell this child that I've done something useful and meaningful for them. So on behalf of a child not yet born, thank you very much. Because there is a sense of wanting to make a positive difference and contribution. I didn't know how to enact that. But my belief was if I was supporting a global profession in the best way I possibly could, with coaches like yourselves, going out there having fabulous conversations with people, then good things at least must be happening. So that was that. And then I went to another period of lostness, saying, okay, but how do I really live this now? And it was out of that the One Leadership Project came. So there we are. So now we work with these people, we do writing, we do research, we do facilitation, we do all these things. Helping those people that have some sense of wishing, or they have purpose or wishing to find some sort of purpose, some sort of sense of beyond me, there's a reason why I'm here, what is it I'm looking to do. So there we go. Part of me wants to kind of draw back at the moment after all that. I'm wondering if there's anything coming up. I'm wondering if I'll then kind of move into what have we discovered about people who are being catalytic in the world. Well, I'm wondering if something else wants to happen there. Has anyone got anything big that's arising for them, or should I just let it move on? I'll just share another anecdote because it's come to mind. It's out of interest. A year or two after 2008, so 2009, 2010, I was invited to speak to a coaching group, not just anything, it's in Finland, to celebrate their 10th anniversary. And it's titled as Myself as ICF Coach. And I found myself going off piste and talking about the medical and mental difficulties. And a hand went up. I said, Neil, can I interrupt you? They've come for a celebration and here I am talking about this. Okay, we're going to get a kick in. Let's just take it. So, this guy said, I'd like to give you a round of applause. Thank you. But before that, I can ask why, because I'm slightly surprised. Well, here in Finland, health is important, so we don't normally talk about not being healthy. And mental health is something we really don't talk about. And I've never heard a man in public say that they've had mental health issues. And so for you to say that, and also to hear your story of them, what happened, just like to give you a round of applause, which they did. And at the end they wanted to sing a little song as well. Thank you for the music. Slightly embarrassing, but it felt lovely. And I think that's what kind of touches that who they are a bit as well. I then realised that this thing I've been hiding through shame and guilt and goodness knows what actually released people. It enabled them to talk about their pain and their suffering. It enabled them to see the dark and the light, and to hold these in balance, and to see that there's sometimes a relationship between the two. That sometimes we have to get very lost, or go to these dark, lonely places, to find what's really important. That Joseph Campbell speaks of how often temples and cathedrals and other such things have gargoyles or dragons or vicious creatures looking out. And he puts it in the context of to reach the heaven. There it is. It's okay. To reach heaven, you have to go past your demons. And curious things happen because once you're inside, those demons are outside protecting you. And so I think, for this coaching, and I don't know how this speaks to you on your coaching journey, perhaps there's a question for us all here about, what is our greatness, what is our strength, but also what is our shadow side? What is our journey? What are the journeys we're prepared to go on? Are we comfortable stepping into that space with our clients where they reveal their strength and greatness and vulnerability, and it is all good? So, thank you. Anyway, so I'm just going to share that something. Just checking with Neil. Neil, what time do you want me off?
No, you haven't got your signal yet.
Thank you. Am I okay carrying on? Yeah? Okay, thank you. One of the joys we do is I don't have the answers. I remember being in the back of a taxi going back to the airport with Liz Hall, who's editor of Coaching and Work magazine, having been to the Madrid conference, ICF conference, where a lot of people are saying there's all these things going on in the world and coaches have got to do something. And the coach is saying, yeah, but what can I do? So I mentioned it with Liz. I said, well, what can we do? And she said, well, go and write me something. Okay. And I went through a moment of trying to be clever. And then I realised, no, that's not the right way of doing this. It's not about my answers. But it would be really interesting to hear the voices of others. And so we set out and we spoke to a lot of people who were making great things happen as volunteers and leaders at the sharp end of things. And then we spoke to coaches who were working with these people. And then we spoke to the coaching bodies. And it was really interesting the learnings that came from that. And we then started moving into what we call 50 conversations, speaking at depth with people about what is their inner journey. There's lots of books on how to. You set this up and you go and do that. But what's it like when you're making something good happen in the world? What's it like at 3 o'clock in the morning? What's it like when it goes well, but what's it like when it goes badly? What keeps you going in those sort of moments? So I thought I should share with you some of the things that we hear, because whilst it's not true for all people, a lot of these things seem to come up quite consistently. And I wonder what that means for you if you've experienced any of these. And I wonder what that may mean in terms of how you wish to support others who maybe want to make good things happen in the world. We often found there were seminal moments, there were moments of transformation when something happened and something clicked and changed. And that it was often surprising in these people's lives. One of the most surprising for me was someone that was a chair and a leader in the environmental world. It was a trip to a sewage farm, of all things. Not necessarily seen to be most inspirational. But he said on the trip to the sewage farm, he realised how things just keep going round. And that it was all connected. Yeah? That everything was connected. And this sense of connection comes up again and again. My colleague Alistair talks of the corn crakes in Northern Ireland where he grew up. And the farmers changed their practice, and almost overnight the corn crakes vanished. And again he realised how one thing affects something else. So one of the things we noticed was that people have stories around moments of transformation when things click. But they always seem to be about connecting. People realising that all things are connected. We noticed that a lot of these people would end up in moments like this talking. And they would find themselves almost rambling, not sure what they're saying, and wake up and go, oh, there's all these people here. And the curious thing that happened, they thought they completely lost themselves, but the people were saying, wow, you've been amazing and inspirational, and you're so real. And there's a strange paradox about something which touched you so deep inside it just comes out. Where we kind of lose ourselves in the process, and yet we appear real on the outside. And so it's described as not of me but through me. And someone described it as having the hollow bone. There's a sense of stewardship and serving something. And we often hear people feeling much more courageous when they are speaking on behalf of others, on something they care deeply about, in a way that they couldn't be speaking about themselves. Which comes very clearly. And we began to discover that making big things happen in the world doesn't require the normal sense of masculine, heroic leadership. That many of the most powerful things happen in very gentle ways, what we call the gentle catalyst. That these people had a habit of noticing what was going on, and with courage, but also non-judgmental, naming it. I noticed this happening in my community. I saw this happening there. And I was very moved by it. I may have been angry, but I'm not necessarily angry with the perpetrators. I'm just angry that it's happening. Or that I'm inspired. So they were noticing and naming. They were asking questions. I spoke to you earlier about when we were doing the research for this article for Liz. So we ended up speaking to all the leaders in the major coaching bodies, global coaching bodies, saying, so what do you think is the role of the coaching and mentoring profession and the professional bodies in helping address these big social, economic and environmental issues? And almost to a woman and man, they had about 30 seconds of fluidity, perhaps even a soundbite. And then it went quiet. And then they said, it's not enough, is it? It's not enough. And you will notice now, I don't know the relationship between those conversations and what happens, but all the major coaching bodies now, I say something along the lines of in service of humanity flourishing, or something along that bigger purpose sort of nature of things. And it taught us a lot about the nature of change. It isn't necessarily about being adversarial, but planting the right question in the right way with the right person, and then sitting and listening. And let them and the silence and the question do the heavy lifting. But there's something about the challenges which we face at the moment are so complex, so difficult, that there is no one that's got all the answers. But that perhaps we've all got part of the answers, we've got part of the jigsaw. And that by being people, with people, and asking the right questions, and creating that safety for them to be both great and vulnerable, they become clear about what is their piece of the jigsaw. And an openness to work with others who've got other pieces, or trying to work out how do all these pieces begin to fit together. And I could go on, but it's now 5 past, which means it's probably the end of this. So I don't know if any of that has been any use whatsoever. But it's been a real joy being with you. Thank you for listening. Whatever it is on your journey, and whatever in there may have been of some use to you, and I don't know if there was anything at all, I hope it hasn't been a waste of an afternoon. And nothing's wasted. Nothing's wasted.
Well done.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Can we please thank you?